Well, welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host, Paul, joined today by Sean Chandler, who I'm actually a big fan of. I was telling him before this, I watch all his videos, but I don't interact, or comment with them, so he'd never know. But pretty much all of your stuff I watch, and I'm like, he was bang on the money, he had a great take. So thank you for joining me on this video. 28 years later, and this part of the franchise specifically is one that's quite near and dear to my heart, because, look, Geordies and where I'm from doesn't get any representation on screen really, and this entire part of this trilogy that they're doing is set basically around where I live, and I don't even know if people like in America know about Geordies and stuff, but it's quite a big part of the culture in the Northeast, and there's so many locales and stuff. So I wanted the guy with the best takes on the internet who might not necessarily know about it, because I feel like I'm biased towards this. I don't know. I was saying like representation's obviously a big thing, but I don't feel like I've ever been this represented on screen before. So I'm very biased towards this thing because they mentioned stuff in it that I'm like, oh yeah, that's a guy down the road who I know. So I thought I'd get you on. I think you've got very good takes, and I think you'll provide a very balanced view of the film and a good perspective on someone who isn't connecting with it on the level that I am, who might have a differing opinion and be like, the Teletubbies is shit, Paul. What do you mean? This is very jarring. So what were your initial thoughts on the movie? And then we'll kind of go through it scene by scene and kind of dissect it a bit.
So just as a point of reference, I was very mixed on 28 years later. Where it was like there's the highs I thought were really high. When it was poignant, I thought it really worked. I just felt like it was kind of like three movies in one, or each act was directed by a different director. And so there's just kind of like some tonal things that just felt very unbalanced for me, where I just couldn't feel like I ever got on the wavelength of the movie, or as soon as I did, it shifted to something different. And then it ended on this note, speaking of the Teletubbies, where it just went into this like Teletubbies, Power Rangers into the movie that felt like it came out of absolutely nowhere, tonally speaking. Like, I understand the character was set up at the beginning, but the way that it played out, I was like, what is this?
What the fuck?
Yeah, right. It's like, that's an interesting note to end your movie on. Like, okay.
Yeah.
But like I
It's
said,
that
there's
bit in the
things that
studio where they're like, oh, this is the greatest movie ever. And then they have like another scene after it and they're like, what the fuck was that?
Right. I mean, just like totally bizarre. But the highs were really high. This is the point of reference going into the Bone Temple. And I thought Bone Temple completely course corrected all of that. Of like a movie that picked a focus, picked a tone, and just it could be beautiful and poignant. And then it was terrifying, suspenseful at the exact same time. And we end on the note it was the Jimmy Gang, but they did this Power Rangers thing. It was like, that was weird.
Yeah.
This movie kicks off immediately, and you're like, these guys are terrifying. This is horrifying. Yeah. And immediately course corrected the thing that was so frustrating for me with the last movie. And so I just thought it was thoughtful. It has amazing needle drops, and it just like keeps you on the edge of your seat as you're like have a front row seat of an insane cult with someone that can't do anything about it because he's a helpless child, a victim in the cult. While there's this bizarro, beautiful story of friendship with an infected person going on at the same time. Yeah. I just loved the way that all that pulled together.
I want to go home. That's basically Spike's entire arc. I just want to go home.
The whole thing.
Yeah, so that first film I really like it, but I can totally understand it's very, very experimental. Even shooting on the iPhones and stuff, and you've got like those weird Matrix things. I do enjoy it, but I can totally, and I get so many comments whenever I say I enjoyed it. People, and it's normally from Americans who don't necessarily jive with that style. I think there's a lot to take on board if you're not used to that culture. And even stuff like Jimmy being based on Jimmy Savile, it means something totally different in the UK than it would to just your generic person watching in the movie in another country who doesn't necessarily have those cultural cornerstones of it.
Right. For me, I only have the most superficial of knowledge of who he is. Like, I'm aware that there's a pop culture figure that turned out to be a monster, and that's as deep as it goes. And so for me, God, all that went completely over my head. Like, what on earth is this? Yeah. And then afterwards, after the movie comes out, people are like, oh, it's about this person, and this is the backstory. I was like, oh, that makes a lot more sense, but like I had no context for it.
Yeah, I mean, if you say Jimmy Savile in the UK, I'm pretty sure everyone knows what you're talking about, but I can totally understand why people I mean, it would be like Jimmy Savile over here was just massive. It would be like finding out that Mr. Rogers is like someone who abuses children and stuff. That's kind of the level I would see it at. Was a massive figure over here. So I do feel like that first film hits English people on a different level than it would necessarily someone in America or somewhere else. This film, I feel, is just a more universal one, where it's not necessarily going for those more niche references. Like, there's even a bit in 28 Years Later where they walk past a tree, and in England, that tree was cut down in the middle of the night by some vandals. And there was like a massive thing where it was just like a massive news story over here because it was like a treasured site and a national like treasure thing. And they go past it in the movie because, you know, that it hasn't been cut down in this timeline. And there's little touches like that you're not going to catch if you're just watching it without the knowledge of it. Whereas this movie, I feel, is more anyone can watch it and understand what's going on. And we start off, I kind of want to go through the movie bit by bit, but we start off basically in a circle. And this is the first bit that I think we can all relate to, because I feel like we've all kind of been in the situations where we're surrounded by a group who are just kind of pushing us back and forth. And they're like, come on, fight back. Like, I remember, I think I got a cap stolen once, and I was basically in this situation where I was surrounded by a gang who had the cap, and they were just toying with me, trying to get me to grab it back. And you do kind of wonder how Spike's going to get out of this situation. And it's purely by luck that he kind of stabs the guy in the artery and then he starts bleeding out. And I think you instantly see just how cold this group is, because none of them are going to help the guy. And this is their friend who's basically a part of their cult, who's just bleeding out of his leg, looking around, thinking like, come on, help us, please. I'll do a lot of Geordie accents throughout this, so you'll learn a lot here. But kind
I
of
probably
what was
shouldn't try any Geordie.
Do it.
That would be bad.
So yeah, what was kind of, how did you feel going from your last memory being the Power Rangers Teletubby stuff to this? Yeah.
Like, it immediately made me go, okay, I get what this movie is. It like immediately kind of course corrected it in my brain. I guess keep using that phrase because that's what it really felt like. Of the tone, I just didn't get it of what they were doing because it was just so out of the blue in the previous movie. And then likewise, what am I supposed to think and feel about this gang? And then this scene, it opens up and you feel the camaraderie of them, but in this very aggressive, you just sense danger every single time they are on screen. You tense up because you're like, oh, I don't know what's going to happen. And you have this innocent child that we followed in the previous movie who, you know, is kind of a sweet kid trying to take care of his mother, trying to find his way, kind of goes out on his own. And this is what he finds. This is what he wanders into. The people that saved him from the infected are now like, you know, pushing him into a fight. Like, hey, if you survive, you get to join us. Like, great. What a prize. Like, and like you said, he just kind of accidentally survives. And the way it plays out is like they're joyful watching the violence and have absolutely no concern over the person that was a member of their tribe, their gang, bleeding out. And it's like, hey, you're a new person joining, and they're excited for the new person, but at the same time, it means nothing because they don't care that that guy died. And it's just completely interchangeable, completely dehumanizing, and that sets the tone for the whole movie of, oh, this is going to be a brutal ride, which this is a cold scene, and it's nowhere close to the coldest scene in the movie.
Yeah, I think it's quite, throughout the film, I was constantly thinking as well with Jimmy, why don't they just rush him and kill him, and then they're all kind of free to do what they want. But he's such an ending, like, it's very much about the cult of personality, and also I think it plays upon, you know, cults in general. There's a lot of religious allusions throughout the movie, and we even have things like the Judas amongst the group who's kind of turning against Jimmy and questioning his ways and trying to basically trip him up so he exposes himself. But we meet Jemima, I think, and Jimmy Inc. as well, she's called in these scenes. Now, I feel like this movie's very much a kind of tale of two halves and a tale of two tones, and whereas the last film didn't necessarily balance the tones really well, I think we have basically one group that's messed up, very horrific, and then on the flip side of this we've got quite a humorous tale with Dr. Ian Kelson. who has basically realized that Samson is coming to him for hits and drugs, and he's basically back to being a doctor and prescribing stuff. So Samson's addicted to morphine, and he's basically intentionally letting himself get a shot in the neck so he can get a hit and kind of calm his mind down. There's obviously, you know, we've had the intelligent zombie trope in things like Day of the Dead, with Bub, but I kind of felt like this was more endearing and they did a lot more. Like, I think Samson becomes a lot more of a character. And I know the actor last time, he was saying that he was a bit annoyed that people were just focusing on his dick and that's all they really talked about. But obviously he'd shot this stuff, and it's kind of like when you shoot something and something releases before that you get a lot of crap for, and in the back of your mind you're like, oh, I wish they could see this one. How did you feel like Samson was throughout the movie? Because I feel like he really develops into an actual character and he goes on a proper arc, which I just wasn't expecting at all.
Right. Well, like one of the distinctions that in some of my posts about it, said they were zombies, and people are like, no, they're infected. And this specific
I got
plot
a lot of
line,
shit for that too. They say zombies all the time in these movies. You get
Right.
so much shit for it though.
And the difference between what's a zombie, what's an infected, and then even some vampire lore, they all kind of blend together in the way it plays out. You get bit, you turn into a mindless thing that eats people, that bites people. But specifically with the lore of this movie, in the plot of this movie, and this specific plot line, the fact that he's infected is a pivotal difference. An infected person can have medicine and be cured to some extent, or you can mitigate symptoms. And so the whole plot line is about this beast that has been ripping heads off, slowly remembering and getting back to who he was. And like you said, he's a drug addict, but in a context where being a drug addict means he actually becomes that better, closer to that real, better version of himself. And through that, there's a friendship formed. Like the vicious killer is sitting down and puts pants on and covers up that enormous dong. Like there's like these slow progression of like putting the fact that he puts pants on is reclaiming his humanity. And they're like in this set of films that's all about how things have deteriorated. You're contrasting it with the Jimmy gang that has completely lost their humanity. They're vicious. They have no caring concern for their own tribe. And then Samson, who rips heads off and eats people, makes a friend. Puts his pants on and reclaim like the smallest details of humanity. Having a small amount of modesty means so much in this context. And there's something just like there's something very beautiful about it. It's kind of the same arc that's in Terminator 2 of the Terminator learns the value of humanity while Sarah Connor has become a Terminator. And that's kind of what's going on here of we're watching someone in a tribe that has no humanity while the infected regains his humanity.
Yeah, I did kind of see more like obviously Samson's a name that comes from the Bible, and I did see a lot of biblical allusions with the two characters. I kind of saw Kelson almost as like a god figure, and the Bone Temple being a sort of Garden of Eden, and just him kind of gaining knowledge and then putting clothes on. It kind of reminded me a lot of Adam and Eve being naked, and then when they gained the knowledge, they put clothes on to cover themselves. So I kind of saw Kelson as that side to it. And then you've got pure evil embodied in Jimmy, who says he's the son of Old Nick, which is a name for Satan. And he's kind of going around terrorizing the country. But I got a lot of those religious allusions throughout. Sorry?
One that believes in the higher power is pure evil. The atheist is the one that's trying to do its best for mankind. Like the whole thing, it's interesting how many illusions there are and how many more you can keep picking up throughout it. And the way that it intertwines belief, atheism, all these kind of deals that like it really is the sort of film that rewards second viewings because you can watch the first time for the plot, the suspense, the tension, but it's like how many more things you could pick up all along the way of what's being implied with each character.
I think I can totally understand why Jimmy went the way he did as well, because in this world to him, the devil's won and has just came forth with all of his demons. And it's kind of that old thing of like, would you rather serve in heaven or reign in hell? And I see Jimmy as being like the reign in hell kind of guy. He was just like, well, my dad's the devil, I'm going to go through. But even he knows he's kind of chatting shit, which we get into later on. But there's a brilliant scene that we go to after all the dancing and getting stoned, where we join a new group of survivors who don't really get introduced, but I did learn this is Andy Serkis's son is the guy Tom, apparently. So yeah, We join a pregnant woman with two other guys. One of them, the older guy, sees like a guy hobbling along on like a broken ankle, and he's like, well, I could go over and kill him. It's like, well, no, he's going to scream out. I wouldn't have went over. I would have been like, right, we're off. The infected are here. But this kind of starts a new sort of almost karmic thing where they leave this guy behind who gets bitten and transforms, and then they arrive at the farm, which is where they live. Yankee Mill it is, if you're in Newcastle or around this area. If you want to go, we are going to go there to shoot the breakdown, but that's where it is. So yeah, they go back there, and had they had this guy, I think they would have stood a better chance against the Jimmies, but they kind of sacrificed him, return showing bad news, like, oh, sorry, the guys, and then say, well, look, we've walked into a worse situation here. This scene, I love scenes like this where there's a clear side of characters that are absolutely terrified, and you've got the other side that are just having a good time and even dancing around. Very, very tense. And you do kind of wonder at what point the tension's going to break and someone's going to make a move to kind of try and escape. And obviously that happens. The woman runs off. The rest are taken captive, and then we get a very messed up torture scene. Watching this, how did you feel about that whole situation?
I think like this goes back to that opening scene setting the tonal foundation for the movie, which is these guys are crazy. And if this is how they treat their own, what are they doing to everyone else? And you can look at their group. It's not a bunch of 30, 40-year-olds. Like, that's not what this is. And so they walk into this place, and you just know at some point in time, this is going to be horrifying. So you're just sitting there waiting in it. True tension, true suspense, waiting for the explosion of violence. Are they going to start it? Is someone going to try to escape? How's it going to play out? And like you said, just the juxtaposition of the demeanor, the feel of the two groups. One completely relaxed, and they're the ones that are dangerous. And the others just tense as can be, knowing, crap, this is going to get really bad. Because you can establish as a clear danger at the beginning. Clear, complete contempt for humanity, like no concern whatsoever for life. You just know this is going to be bad. And like as you go to the torture scene, and they say, was it take off the shirt? Was it?
Yeah, something. I was trying to think what the term was, but it's something to do with the shirt.
Yeah, take off the shirt, take off the pants, whatever that language is. You just hear it and you go, oh, that can't possibly mean what it means when I say that. And so you're just sitting there like, what's going to happen here? And then it plays out, and it's like, somehow I knew it was going to be horrifying, but they made it more horrifying. More like, oh, you're showing way too much.
Yeah.
Just sitting there squirming.
The skin peeling off, and you have characters in the background that are slightly blurred, like with that, but you can see like all their skin's being cut off. And you've got Spike there, who's kind of sitting, not wanting to do it. And you've also got Kathy, I believe the name might be. When I did my video, they hadn't released the character name. I think it's Kathy, who's the pregnant woman. She's kind of sitting, watching by, and you kind of know she's the sort of the person, the wild card in this situation. And then Jimmy offers basically Tom a chance to join the Fingers, and he picks Jemima to be the person that he fights. Gets his arse completely handed to him, which was, I did find it quite satisfying how he thought he was going to basically have an easy way out of this situation, and he got just the shit kicked out of him. But then the wild card comes because she goes to cut his dick off, and then Kathy uses a hook through her and kills her. And I just love the way the camera kind of stayed on her for quite a while. And you're just sitting there watching, like, when's this going to cut and when are we going to find out what's happening? This then leads to Tom setting fire to the barn. I love how they kind of cut to the people who are still alive that have been skinned. And there's almost like that look of like, well, at least it's coming to an end now. And we just have to wait a couple more minutes and then this is all over. And this leads Spike to chasing after her. They kind of drop this character. I'm guessing they're saving her for a sequel. But Spike's like, can I go with you? And she puts her hand out, punches him, flees off into the night. And that's the last we see of her. So yeah, kind of Spike then returns saying like, oh, I killed her. So she's over there. And you kind of see the dissent in the group where all know that Spike isn't cut out to be in this group at all. And he just got lucky. And they're kind of carrying the weight for him a lot of the time, I think. Now, it's at this point that Jimmy, I keep getting there. Was she called Kelly? I think she was called Kelly. She's been sent out to basically spy on the surrounding areas, and she's seen what she believes is old Nick and his demons dancing at the Bone Temple. And you can totally see how you'd see that skull monument and be like, that is the devil. Because I remember when they first dropped the first trailer, I was convinced that Kelson was like the big bad of the whole thing, and this kind of guy with a demonic castle of bones around him. So she basically comes back, says, oh, we can go see old Nick ourselves, and this kind of puts Jimmy in what he calls a bind. So he goes out to see Kelson, and they kind of sit down and have a deal with the devil. As Jimmy's kind of true personality was coming out, and he's like, oh, I've never really spoken to anyone like this before. It's actually nice speaking to someone, and kind of drops from his status as a cult leader. How did you like that turn? Because I know some villains can be weakened by showing more humanity. It would be like the Joker, like taking the makeup off and sitting down and being like, oh, it sucks being the Joker.
Well, I think you kind of, what you touched on just a second ago, that idea that everybody knows that Spike doesn't belong here, and they're all just kind of going along with that. That's almost this running thing throughout the movie. The Jimmy gang knows this guy's a lunatic. He doesn't know what he's talking about, but they're following him. And they know this kid doesn't belong here, and he's lying about killing the girl, but we're going along with it. And so it's all like built on, this house of cards of lies that we all know that we're all lying to each other, but we're all kind of going along with it because it kind of works well enough. And so I think because you've set up this world where everybody knows that this is nonsense, it almost, you get to this point to where you have the honest moment with the character of, it allows us to realize he knows, he knows. It gives an authenticity to it that it is like the Joker taking the makeup off in one sense, but it's in a context where allowing the character to actually be a real person and not just the cartoon character. So I think it works in that context of, all right, we all know, even he knows that we're playing a game here. And it creates that scenario of he's still skinning people. He's recruiting people to skin people while knowing, I'm just saying a bunch of nonsense. And I think it gives a reality to it, that like that horrifying side to it of, it's not even that he's just completely bonkers and insane. He has a self-awareness, and he's still doing all this insanity.
Yeah.
And so there's in it, I think it gives the movie keeps going back to humanity. Yeah. Whether that's the infected putting pants on and making a friend and dancing, or the side to it of even the crazy guy has that moment where he's like, it's actually really refreshing that I can be honest with you.
Yeah.
As crazy as this moment is, there's something to it that it's like, you feel a sense of relief as we're just being honest for a change.
Yeah, like I've always kind of wondered with the Joker, what does he do when he's just sitting about watching TV and making a sandwich to have lunch or something, and sitting around like checking his phone and that. And I love that moment, and it kind of, he talks about how he hears voices and stuff, and I think this is what makes Kelson realize, oh, this is a person I could help. Just in the same way that he was out helping Samson, he's kind of seen this as a psychosis that he can potentially treat. During this, Samson's also had a breakthrough moment of speaking where he says moon, and we kind of get his journey as he moves back through the wilderness and the places that he's been to. They did say that this was like the first time an infected had talked. They were lying, because in 28 days later, there's a little kid who shouts, "I hate you," who's infected. And I caught that, Boyle, or whoever wrote it. I'm sick of you making these mistakes.
Garland.
Garland, So yeah, he goes back to the train, and we kind of get a flashback to when he was younger. And I just love the way he kind of, the first thing he says is just sort of, "I haven't got a ticket." And the way that we also see all the infected standing around him, and just in the same way that the Jimmies have kind of been questioning whether Spike's a true member of their cult, we now see the infected realizing this guy ain't infected, he's faking it. So everything breaks out, but obviously because he's got this enhanced strength and abilities, he just beats the shit out of them. Such a good scene, and I love that was kind of the way his arc went.
And like you said, it's just like a series of these parallels and reversals.
Yeah.
This guy doesn't fit in this group, so we reject you. And then over here, it happens even with the infected. It's like paralleling something that happened elsewhere. And it just works so nicely. It just, those little details that just, everything feels like it complements, shows the reverse side to something. Or even something you said before, you thought that our doctor was going to be the main villain of this trilogy of films, because you're seeing him like in a bone temple. And when he's first introduced, even in 28 years later, like, I mean, what's Voldemort doing over there? Like, He's
Yeah.
collecting dead bodies and stuff like that. And then he's the guy that just has like this most sincere humanity to him, just like he's off on his own, but he hasn't actually lost himself. He's very weird. He's a very distinct existence, but he hasn't, like, everything he's doing is a celebration of life and memories and everything like that, and hasn't lost a desire to help even the most vicious of humans and infected, and just these constant kind of what you expect. And if you when you first see Jimmy, it's lighthearted, bright colors, looks kind of cleaned up in certain regards, and he's the craziest, most dangerous one there is.
Yeah.
And the guy that's dressed up in the Bone Temple, covered in red stuff, he's the one that is you're the safest if you're around him.
Yeah. I think as well, just if you had told me going into this beforehand, one of the zombies goes back to normal and kind of becomes a human again, I would have thought, oh, that sounds a bit stupid. But I think the way they handled it by showing it not only the treatment, but also the journey through his eyes, where he's an actual character, it really, really adds to it, where we're kind of experiencing things. Normally, whenever zombies or the infected or stuff are shown in a film or a story like this, it's from the perspective of the human characters. It's very rare that you just follow around someone infected for the day, and that's kind of what it feels like. Almost a day in the life of. I think that they did it in Black Summer, I think, where you had someone get bit and then you kind of followed them as they ran onto someone else. But that's the most I can think of it, where we really focused on an infected person as a character and then followed them without any of the other human characters around them. And just seeing that turn, I thought it was really, really good. And it's kind of set my mind spiraling off for the future of how they can cure this thing and where they can eventually go with it, because a lot of these zombie movies, they don't actually cure it. You just kind of end up with either things end ambiguous, or you get The Walking Dead, where it just goes on forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. So he's kind of the wild card out there at the moment. Now, Kelson's basically agreed to put on this show, and he puts on a fantastic show for Jimmy. He gets Iron Maiden out, does dancing, it's a big fire thing. So I love the way that in doing this, there was kind of the melding of the tones at this point as well, because you had the tension of, well, is this thing going to be pulled off and is it going to be good? But you also had the humorous side of it from Kelson, in like you're dancing around and it's all a show, and it's fantastic. I think the way that they put together that scene.
At my theater, which I guess it was a press screening, but it was also a leaked screening where they invited fans and people that ran some websites and stuff. So it was like a combination of the Uber fans and critics. When that song ended, like, just applause, like the whole theater, like we're in a rock show or something. Yeah, like people went absolutely nuts as soon as Number of the Beast ended. I think that's what, like, this movie has those bold swings, those ideas like, will that really work? In the same way that 28 Years did, this movie, I think, landed them a lot better. They felt like they tonally were a little bit more kind of consistent. It didn't feel as jarring when we went to the big, bold stuff. This felt like, yeah, that's what he would do. You've earned the fact that get to this moment where he's like, all right, let's put on a show. I'm the devil, and here's Iron Maiden.
Yeah.
And as big as it, bold and wild and wacky as it is, and funny as it is to see this 60-year-old man dance around like that to that song, it fits. That's the lie that he would tell those characters, and that they would believe, that they would go along with. And so it felt earned as you got to that moment, or like even to what you just talked about with Samson, of, right, the idea of turning, the idea that you'd have him dancing a little bit and putting, before the movie came out, there was big headlines were made, not as much zombie dick in this movie, which was false. Yeah. There's still a lot in this movie, but he does put pants on. Yeah. And if you told me that, like, it's a whole plot point that, Voldemort's going to put pants on him, start dancing with him a little bit, I'd be like, no. Oh no, what are you doing? But the movie earns each of these moments. Like, it builds up to it by letting us understand the characters. And so when you start doing the ridiculous stuff, we walked our way to that. And they're just such great payoff moments. Like I said, my audience was just like, they built up to it so well that it truly felt like his rock show. And we got to applaud that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think that's one of the standout scenes of the whole franchise, to be honest, and probably going to be one of those scenes that people remember this time next year as being like, oh, that was a great scene last year. And it's the poster for the movie, but the poster doesn't actually spoil. Like, you can have that as the poster of him making the crazy face, and you go like, sure, he's in the Bone Temple doing something.
but that does not remotely prepare you
Yeah.
for how fun and terrifying and everything that scene is.
Yeah, like I did a couple of trailer breakdowns on this movie and I got it all wrong. I was seeing Kelson dance around and being like, oh no, what the hell is this? Is he like doing war paint to try and scare off the Jimmies? But it's all kind of him ushering in and basically co-signing what Jimmy wants
Right.
to do, which is to extend his cult, get permission. He's now basically played it so that a higher power is telling him what his mission is, and you can see it's sitting very uneasy with Kelson, but he's just like, I just want to get rid of these people. I want this cult to leave my house. I'm a bit fed up with them. And so he's just saying whatever, but then he notices Spike under the mask. I did like how even with the mask on, he still recognized him, because I was getting really frustrated with being like, if Spike just leaves without ever revealing who he is, and he's just under the mask the whole time, I'll think that's a missed opportunity. But they do it where Spike keeps the mask on because he's trying to hide who he is, but Kelson's also not stupid, and he realizes who he is. You know, it's not like Batman or Clark Kent, where he's putting on glasses and people are like, I don't know who this guy is. Even under the mask, he still recognizes him. And this is kind of when he plays his sort of ace up the sleeve, where he says that, you know, Jesus was crucified, and he needs for him to do the same thing. And then I love how this is actually what happens, and we get the sort of Judas betrayal, and then from there he gets stabbed in the side, which kind of came out of nowhere, and then crucified upside down with that such good imagery. Forgot to mention, he also stabs Kelson during this and basically exposes that it's not what it is. But in doing that, he kind of exposes himself as well, because he's shown like, oh, well, I was the one who was saying this was all real, and now I'm saying it's all bullshit. So we kind of end with him upside down on a crucifix. Kelson also dies, and we get Samson heading towards him, appearing like Satan himself, but he chooses Kelson over him and thanks him for what he's done. And I just love the way it kind of ended with, Father, why have you forsaken me? Just again playing perfectly into those crucifixion and biblical references. Now, how did you feel about that? Because in the back of my mind, I'm like, we've got another film and they basically cured the big bad zombie and Jimmy's dead. So what are they going to do next? How did you feel that kind of wrapped it up? Because I kind of feel like this could almost be the final chapter, but I know they've announced 3's obviously in development.
Yeah, it's a little difficult to know exactly what they're doing with this because of obviously what the next scene is that teases the flavor of it, but not in a plot direction. It's like, okay, we're bookending all of this with this character over here. But yeah, I mean, I think with when I've described it on the internet saying, oh, it's all about how the reality is that the humans are more terrifying and dangerous than the zombie or the infected. Almost said the wrong word again.
I've said it so much.
And people being like, oh, I'm so tired of the fact that it's not, I show up just for the zombie carnage. I don't, why are you telling me a story that's about how humans are bad? But it does such a good job of it. It's not like it's light on infected. Like, that's a whole central piece to it. It's just not doing the same basic zombies eating people. And so you're telling a story about the cult leader and about the human doctor friend with the infected making the friend. And so you're trying to, this isn't ultimately what this trilogy of films is about Jimmy and him being the threat. That's the journey that Spike is on of going out in the world. He thought that the big fear was all about these infected, and he realizes humans can be just as dangerous. But also, the human that I was told is crazy is actually the sweetest guy out there. And so I don't know where the plot's going. I understand why we don't need to continue Jimmy's story, because that was kind of this one piece paralleled with our doctor. So I have no idea. I don't know where the plot's going. I don't know how, but like you said, if you could have done a different bookend here of him going back home, ending with the scene they did clearly is teasing some future thing. It doesn't feel like the closing, but also there's not that many lingering plot threads, or with slight changes of, the doctor hands a notebook to Spike with some information or something that you could run with that to here's what you can do.
Yeah.
But they didn't quite do that. So I don't know exactly what to make of the end, except to say that it was very satisfying, the end to these characters, and having Samson just kind of close it out with a thank you. There's just something so just simple and beautiful. It doesn't need to be overstated, but you gave an infected person an actual arc that pays off with the most simple of terms, the most basic of human connection, gratitude.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm totally dumbfounded on where things are going to go. I mean, I had theories that Jimmy was a cult of Jim, who was obviously like the main survivor of the first film. I do kind of feel like the island's obviously going to come back into it. You know, Aaron Taylor Johnson, all of those islanders, they're not in the film at all, which was quite a big surprise. And I mean, some of the first comments I got, obviously, you know, when I do like an ending explained, I get people who haven't seen it just asking questions, and lots of them were saying like, "Is Aaron Taylor Johnson in this film?" And I was
That's
like, "No,
the question
not at
I
all."
immediately got. I mean, it was,
Yeah.
is Killian in the movie, and is Aaron how much? It wasn't it's how much is Aaron Taylor Johnson in the movie? Zero.
Yeah, not at all. So I do feel obviously that's going to come back into it. They had those weird cult rituals in the first film where they put on masks and stuff, and I do wonder if they're going to become the bad guys. I think the pregnant woman, I was kind of thinking there might be an Abby situation from The Last of Us, where she's had her whole family killed in front of her, and even though Spike let her go, you would still be resentful. You would still remember, I mean, like, everyone kind of has those people in their past that have wronged them over something stupid. So, and they still hate them today. And every time I post a video, I'm like, I'm getting you back. Look how successful I am. So I can imagine that seeing your family skinned alive, you just wouldn't forgive these people, especially as they're both kind of from that group. So I do wonder if she's going to come back into it. She'll probably meet up with another group of survivors. Jim's such a wild card though, and he's clearly is still good due to the fact that he wants to go and help them, and he's with his daughter as well, which is putting her in a lot of danger. And obviously I think the conflict this time is going to be like, he's putting his daughter in a situation where she was quite happy at home studying for tests and stuff, and now they're confronted with the infected. So I do think that's going to be a wild card. I do wonder if the island are going to become the enemy, and in real life, basically the whole story of Holy Island is that it was which is where the island is. It's a big religious thing. In this film, it's called the big castle you see is like a monastery, and this was all stormed by Vikings. So I do wonder if they're going to kind of replay that and have basically either the infected or people looking for resources or a sanctuary where they can hide out from the infected. They're going to storm the island, and Spike's going to have to kind of see what side he's on there. I do wonder if we're going to get Spike versus his dad, because I feel like a lot of the franchise is setting up the themes of fatherhood versus children. And for example, the first film had the guy turning into a zombie. I keep saying zombie. I'm going to get so much shit. But yeah, he turned into an infected member, went to attack his daughter, and then was gunned down by the military. And we also had the second film, which was Don, basically chasing his kids for most of it. Third film, Spike kind of turns against his dad and takes their mother onto the mainland. And then you have this one with old Nick and Jimmy's father kind of playing into it. So I do wonder if the themes of fatherhood with Cillian Murphy and his daughter is going to kind of play into things next time, and then we're going to get Spike and his own father doing that sort of thing. So that's kind of how I would imagine it.
It's
just so unpredictable, this franchise. You can't, like, if you watch my trailer breakdowns, none of it's right. It's just, there's no way to watch these clips out of context and guess where they're going.
Right, and that's like thinking through all of it. All of the movies go somewhere completely different in how they handle things. 28 Weeks Later is a very kind of straightforward, kind of we're trying to get it back together. Oh no, society broke down, like fairly traditional in the way it plays out. And then, as you said, 28 Years Later is very experimental. And then this one, like it's a story that's just jam-packed with, like you said, biblical allusions. And, it's really about a cult and about a doctor. And the infected are kind of on the outside of the story in a lot of ways. So it's tough to piece together what are they going to do next? And that's kind of what's so fun about it. That's what's so interesting, that it doesn't play into the obvious. You're always kind of guessing, where are we going next? And there's all these pieces kind of laid out for what it could be. And even with some of the history that you're able to kind of give me about the area of like Vikings and stuff like that, I hear that and go, well, that'd be really cool. If they played in some sort of allusions to history like that, that'd be really fascinating.
Yeah.
Even kind of going back to Jim, and one of the things the movie keeps showing is all the different ways that people are responding to all of this and the different paths that they're on. And so you've got the insane Jimmy cult, and then you show Jim, and it feels like a homeschooler that could be anywhere, or not even homeschool. It could just be a dad prepping his daughter for a test at regular school. And it feels so normal and familiar, a parent, and it's not even basic education. It feels like he's like really digging deep into like, I'm going to have a really smart kid in the infected apocalypse, and just these different worlds of what, the community Spike came from versus what Jim is raising his child to be like, just showing different glimpses of how everyone responds to this world that's been created for them, this pocket world that's created on an island. It's just even fascinating of just the jarring shift it cuts to that house and she's reading books, studying, and it feels so distant from everything we've experienced in the rest of this. Even you have a doctor that's very intelligent and obviously scientific in a bone temple.
Yeah.
So far from civilized, and then Jim is in a house with his daughter reading books, educating her. And that constant shift of like unexpected, that detail makes me go, I don't know where we're going next because you keep going to places I was not expecting you to go and exploring things from an angle I was not expecting.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine that we're going to get a lot of his backstory filled in over what's been happening over the last 28 years. Obviously, I'm guessing that's Selena's daughter, but she's not there. And I kind of wonder if we're going to see what happened for them to make this life and then for her to disappear. But yeah, I think the main focus is probably going to be based around the island and going back there. But again, it's so unpredictable. I think they'll probably introduce a new antagonist, or maybe the pregnant woman's going to come across people who basically become the new bad guys. Because look, there's more than enough room to kind of introduce new villains into these films and it not seem jarring. You know, you can have lots of different things. So yeah, that's kind of how I see things going. That pretty much wraps up the movie, Sean. Thank you for joining me on this. This has been really fun. It's been nice just having someone to bounce ideas off and go through the film with. Guys, you can check out Sean. Do you have any final thoughts, Lasty? Sorry, before I kick you out of here.
Thanks so much for having me. Like you said, this is a lot of fun. I love to talk about movies way too much. So having someone to go back and forth with ideas and you say something and it sparks something in my mind, like, well, you're making me love this movie even more. You're putting things together in a way. It's always fun when you can talk movies way too much with someone else, and just an honor that you would invite me onto your channel. Yeah, you are a rock star in this space, so getting invited onto your channel means a great deal to me.
No, thank you. Yeah, like I said, guys, go check out Sean's videos. Honestly, the way you review things, and you are literally someone who anything you say, I'm like, he nailed it. He nailed all my thoughts there and my criticisms that I had, but I just don't have the ability to put it into words. But thank you for coming on the show. Really, really appreciate it, guys. If you have your comments below or something you want to add or discuss about the movie, this is your time to shine, and I love reading your comments as well, so make sure you drop them below. Sean, again, thank you for coming on the channel, and hopefully it's not too long before I see you again.
Sounds great to me.